is it pretty computer intensive these days, or does it depend on which type of engineering you're doing? That if you're working on a bridge, you're not staring at a computer, but
actually you would be today.
Oh, you would. Yeah. Everything is very computer based.
Yeah, today all the tools that you use are all computer based. Virtually everything you do, they simulate. All kind of simulations are being done now, so they're all done with software programs. In the meantime, somebody has to go out and build the bridge and do the testing, do some of the original testing work. You know, because like say somebody wants to build a building out of a new material, well, somebody has to study that material and make sure it's okay. It's gonna actually hold up. And you know, and again, depending upon the kind of company or industry you go into, some industries build things like, say, the aerospace industry. Sometimes they make something that's only going to be used once, like a missile.
Oh, wow.
Then there's the power industry where they design something to last 50 years. So you have a whole different way in which you go about doing that. It's a completely different discipline, and that's why there are so many partitions, is because if you know, just because you're really great in one area doesn't necessarily mean you'll make a very good engineer in another area. You might, but it might take you quite a while to move from one to the other.
But what you're saying they have in common is you have to be interested in things. And have a focus and be able to sustain it without a lot of social interaction.
Right.
But if you want to get ahead and be a manager, having the people skills or presentation skills might help.
Absolutely.
Or would definitely help.
Would definitely help, yeah. And in fact, that's the usual recommendation. That's why I got an MBA. Essentially, I decided at one point in my career to move more into the management area and learn to deal more with how to get people together to do things. And a technical manager is kind of a complicated person because you have to have some technical knowledge as well as some people skills. And that's kind of a rare combination. But like sometimes there'll be, for example, like take a sales engineer. There are such people that are called sales engineers, and what they do is become involved in the sale once it gets a little technical beyond where a normal salesperson can handle it. So they have to be technical as well. In the meantime, they have a lot more people skills than someone who sits in the laboratory all day. So you have like a graduation now from a pure focused person on things to someone that might actually start dealing more with people.
So an MBA helps with that?
An MBA helps with that.
And I know you've always been interested in personal development courses and stuff like that. So there's a way to cultivate your EQ, right? Your emotional quotient.
Right.
How about trends? Prospects for the field? I mean,
I couldn't
growing,
imagine, I couldn't imagine the field not doing anything but growing as everything gets more complex and people dive more and more deeply into every single subject area. Products themselves are getting more and more complex. I was fortunate and I went into electronics, where electronics has just been growing and growing and growing. It keeps going into everything now. And software, of course, is similar because of as I was mentioning earlier, the use of simulations, programs that people can interact with, and that's beyond the fact that there are even entertainment now is going in that direction.
That's right, gaming, huh?
Right, yes, and so you have a lot of different things, the directions. Again, if a person wants to make a choice, they have a lot of variety of choices, in fact, almost too many.
So if somebody wanted to be a gaming engineer, to build games for people, would that be electrical engineering or
It's probably
computer?
More of a software engineering.
Software engineering?
I would say, yeah. When you're developing a really fast game, and some of these computers now where the games use are very much more powerful than a regular desktop computer, so they can do the graphics very rapidly. So some of the engineers in there have to be pretty good at hardware as well. They can't, because they design special software that works very intimately with the hardware to get this high speed. That's what Sun Microsystems did. That's what Pixar does. They have huge computers where, again, they intimately integrate the software in the hardware so they can get very high speed. And they have one single focus just to produce still movies.
I was going to ask you, in terms of a trend, it sounds like biochemistry is one of the ones that's
Absolutely.
Growing.
Right.
But is it at the expense of the others, or do we always need civil engineers? We always need mechanics. So it isn't like the other ones are dying; they're just not growing as much. Or what would you say in comparing these?
Yeah, I would say that some new technology is invading them, so that an old line engineer years ago didn't need to know these new computer programs, but now you need to know them. So it turns out that the improvement of the skill is involved in learning to use the programs themselves, so you can do a lot more simulation. Remember, the only way you know if a bridge is going to fall down is if you build it and it falls down, right? So, but they used to make models in the past. They would make models and test them with wind and shaking and whatever to make sure they wouldn't fall down. But today, they can simulate too as well. So they do both. Some things like say in electrical engineering, an ASIC or an application-specific integrated circuit costs millions of dollars to make the first one. As a result, they do a lot of simulation. So it turns out, again, they use software. Mm-hmm. Everything gets driven more now by the software itself. So even hardware, like one of the things I talk about, at least in my profession, is you can have soft hardware and hard software. It's really interesting how those are commingling as well.
You know, I'm thinking as you're talking that a person that would be attracted to it, somebody that likes puzzles.
Yes,
like puzzles or challenges, or it's almost like a playing with it a little bit. That didn't work. Let's try this. Is there an element of that to it?
There certainly is. And in fact, you were mentioning, like, when I was a child, everyone said, well, if your kid likes an erector set or likes to take things apart. But today, it's a lot harder to take things apart because they're so much more complex and there are things in there you can't see very well. But in the meantime, I think there's just people that just naturally have an interest in things themselves. Why does this work? How does how's the light switch work? How does this electronic switch work, or whatever? And they're much more focused in that direction than other people would normally be. They're very curious people generally. Most engineers are very curious, and usually you have to have a fair amount of intelligence, as you said, because you have to do mathematics, engineering, all these various and sundry specialties. And I would say that if you don't start with a course in engineering somewhere, it's going to be very difficult for you to make a living in the field. But I have seen people who have. I have a friend who started off in psychology, but his dad was an engineer. But he started off in psychology, and he's a really good engineer now.
People move around.
Yeah.
We're running a little short on time. I wanted to just fast forward a little bit to a young engineer, a piece of advice you might give to somebody who's only had a couple. Now they've already decided to be an engineer and they're working, or just some piece of advice you would give to an engineer.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. Probably learning some of the soft skills, especially because when you come out of school, you usually are very highly focused on the profession itself and the techniques of the profession, and paying attention to that. Also, one of the things that I notice is sometimes some people are really enjoy fast-paced living. Some people do not. And some industries, say like the medical industry, takes a long time to develop something because they have to pass through the FDA. Whereas some industries just rapidly turn, like games. They're going every Christmas, they have to have a new one. So you have a much more challenging, rapidly changing thing. So make sure that that's tuned to your personality. Do you like that? Do you want to be in a high-stress environment that has very rapid
Where you see the
turns?
Results of your...
Yeah, you see the results very quickly, but also it's very stressful, right? Every year you have to have something new. Makes it very challenging.
Well, we're out of time, so we're going to have you back maybe sooner than 6 years to tell us more things. Thank you, Carl. It was wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching You're Hired. If you have any input for us about this show or suggestions for future shows, questions about jobs and careers, feel free to email me at steve@bayareacareercoach.com. Again, it's steve@bayareacareercoach.com, and do check out the website to see the 12 keys to getting a great job and finding out about the career coaching I do. It's at www.bayareacareercoach.com. Again, www.bayareacareercoach.com. Also there you can find the contact information of anybody who's been on the show. So if you want to contact Carl, you can. That's at www.bayareacareercoach.com. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on You're Hired. Thanks, Carl.
Great.
Thank you.
Good.
Wow, that's a big subject. I wonder how many different kinds of...